you are. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. In which case, welcome everybody. I think that we're all here and we can officially call to order the regular board meeting of the Truckee-Donner Public Utility District. It is 6 p.m. So 1 p.m. Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. Gavelled in. Shauna, could we get a roll call, please?
Thank you. Director Aguirre?
Here.
Director Bender?
Here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Vice President Laliotis?
Here.
President Finn?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to defer the pledge this evening. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Brian?
President Finn, there are no changes this evening.
Excellent. Public comment. That brings us to public comment. This is the side that we set aside. This is the time that we set aside for the public to address the board on any issue that is not on the agenda. So testimony related to agendized matters should be addressed at the time that that item is considered. Do we have any public comment this evening, Shauna?
Yes, Madam President. We have one public comment that could feed into the workshop, but I figured I would read it right now, and Mr. Dewey is online as well. So this is from Barney Dewey. It has been reported that Grass Valley local businesses lost $400,000 per day the 2019 PSPS events. One business, a food cooperative, reported it lost $300,000 in 2 days from spoilage and lost commerce. I believe the microgrids for Truckee are important and should have a high priority of the PUD. A microgrid that serves the area from downtown Truckee to the businesses and medical districts and the school will help Truckee maintain a more normal experience during PSOM events. In the last board meeting, 2 standing committees were formed to explore TDPUD's top 2 stated initiatives. 1, to become an internet broadband provider, and 2, 100% clean renewable energy. It was noted in the board meeting that the district does not have the resources to have more than 2 standing committees to explore new initiatives. I believe that establishing microgrids should be the highest priority initiative for TDPUD. I am asking the TDPUD board to strongly consider replacing the Community Broadband Initiative with an initiative to establish a microgrid. Here are my thoughts and why this should be done. First, I believe the TDPUD should focus on water and power and not expand staff, skills, and expenses to become an internet broadband provider. TDPUD entering a new competitive market where huge losses could occur is a very high risk to the water and power needs of the community. Second, it has been reported that the PSOM events are likely to last for at least 5 to 10 years and maybe indefinitely. A solution like microgrid is needed now and into the future for the Truckee community. Third, there are existing internet broadband providers that serve the Truckee area. One provider, Suddenlink, provides a very good service to some areas, but a poor service where their infrastructure is older and above ground. However, the solution for the community is not for TDPUD to establish a risky competitive broadband service, but to pressure Suddenlink to repair or replace their areas of poor infrastructure. The town of Truckee is currently taking on this task by working with the state and federal government to resolve the issues of Suddenlink's poor service. If the town is successful, the risk for TDPUD entering this competitive market against a well-funded public company is extremely high. In summary, microgrids can be established in many ways. A fast and relatively low-cost solution is to rent large portable diesel generators for the 4-month PSOM season. Another more sustainable example is to use solar and propane solutions available from Nevada County company, Box Power, located in Grass Valley. I would like TDPUD to investigate these and other microgrid solutions. Please make microgrids as TDPUD's #1 initiative and standing committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Mr. Dewey. Is that all of the public comments for this evening?
Yes, Madam President.
Thank you. And we are going to be discussing microgrids this evening. So I'm going to leave that portion of the comment. And I am just going to quickly clarify that our initiatives were the community's initiatives, that these weren't the PUD's. We spent a lot of time engaging with the community and asking for feedback on what they thought we should be pursuing. And that's how these rose to the top. And I don't think we have any intention of becoming an internet provider. We just want to leverage the infrastructure that the PUD has to help the community's broadband needs. And that's why we're exploring that. So thank you for your comment. I think microgrid conversation is very important. And like I said, we will be having some of that later this evening. Which brings us to the director's update. Do any directors have an update this evening? You can raise your hand. Director Laliotta.
No comment from.
Just want to recognize staff. I know last Friday was a challenging day, and I can attest to that because I've been there. So I just want to thank staff for their resilience in getting the job done and getting water back on to our community. Thank everyone in the community for their patience with these types of incidents. Sometimes they're out of our control, and stuff happens. So just want to thank staff for stepping up and taking care of the problem and getting our community back in water as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. Director Harris?
I just want to ditto that, Tony. We have excellent crews out there, excellent administration and frontline employees, and just want to recognize their patience and the community's patience when dealing with situations such as this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also want to thank the staff. We got it up, the next day? Wasn't it all fixed in one day, Brian? Did the contractor help us, or did we do it all ourselves?
Yeah, I wanted to elaborate on that because we do need to offer.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'll elaborate that in a second, Director Aguirre. But yes, we did receive help, so it was great. It was a community effort.
But you guys did a good job getting it right up and at them.
Absolutely.
I wasn't out of water. I never felt that I was out of water. I saw it first on the TV, channel 8, and I just got the tail end of it. I says, wait a minute, that's our PUD on TV. They showed a picture of our building and the tank overflowing. And that's about as all I got on it. And I got the lowdown today. So I'll wait for your input on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Aguirre. And I'm really going to echo that. I just can't convey how much I admire and appreciate our employees across the board. And I'm just very grateful to be in this with you all. So thank you. Next up is our general manager update. Brian?
Thank you. I'll start with the last topic there with the main leak. And I want to echo everyone's sentiments. Director Laliotis, Vice President Laliotis, knows very intimately with his work in water utility management that sometimes there's a chain of events that happen that lead to these, but it's the resiliency and kind of quick on our feet action. And I want to thank obviously the PUD staff for reacting very quickly and repairing that leak within a very short amount of time. And considering the size of the leak and the kind of not knowing really what was going on, very quick reaction. But I also want to thank the town of Truckee. Public Works helped out there on the streets. Truckee Sanitary District helped us with a sewer lateral fracture. So a collective effort by all of our special districts here in the town Public Works. And as everyone stated, the patience of the business owners, we were able to get that back in water before the lunch rush hour. I know there was a lot of a lot of concern and worry that that day would be lost in terms of revenue. So great work there. And I also want to, we will continue to reach out. Church of the Mountains did have some damage there with that flooding, and thank you for their patience and understanding there. And we will make sure that everyone's whole there in terms of repair and restoration. So we're working with the town and ourselves and the Church of the Mountains to get that resolved. I also want to kind of execute one of our values of accountability. I have to own it. The last board meeting, the board of directors asked staff to agendize the board's opportunity to formally endorse Measure T with the fire district, and we had an oversight and didn't agendize that for this evening, but we will agendize that for August 4th. And I want to just kind of reiterate that the board unanimously or consent was supported there. So from the public consumption here is that the district, the PUD does support that measure with unanimous consent from the board, and we will agendize that for the next week. So that I apologize for Bill Saline, Chief Saline with his great presentation, and Pam Hobday with the campaign. We'll get that on the next agenda. Also, Kathleen Egan and Louise Zabriskie did a great presentation with the library. And so we want to continue to formally support that project as well. So those two items, I own it, and we will get those back on the agenda as we need to. A couple of things that are kind of in the works that we've been participating in as a district. We did have Good Morning Truckee, where we spoke with our neighboring agency, North Star Community Services District and Olympic Valley Services District, on the drought and its impacts here in this basin. We are still in a community that benefits greatly from our rich water resources. We are not in a water shortage situation or condition, but it's important that we all do our part in managing that precious resource. Looking at the data, our usage has gone up in recent years. So that's, a lot of contributing factors there. We've had some dry years that went well into the fall last year. We have an early dry year this year. That's the impacts from the drought for our community. But we also need to remind ourselves all of the great water stewardship and conservation behavior we adopted as a community back in 2014 and 15 during the last drought. And so we kind of have short memories, and we get back into a comfort zone where we can start watering, and we know we have a lot of water resources here, but remind the community that this is a group effort. And while that precious resource is in abundance here in this community, I think it's important that we protect that for future. We don't know what the length of the droughts will be in the future or what the impacts will be. So continue to kind of shoulder that stewardship as a community. We did participate in a business town hall that the town of Truckee facilitated with PSOM. We have a presentation later on for the board here this evening, but I wanted to acknowledge and thank the town for providing that opportunity for local businesses to really interact with our neighboring utility, with Liberty, ourselves, the town of Truckee, the county, and really get some information out there that helps everyone prepare for what we are potentially facing here. And then also thank County Supervisor Hardy Bullock for his routine or regularly scheduled meeting where we can really reach out and work on communication efforts across the larger community there. So that's what I have. Looking forward to the presentation and the workshop, and moving forward.
Thank you very much, Brian. Busy week, aren't they all? On to the consent calendar. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar? Okay. I saw the no. Do we have, and thank you, Shauna. I read your lips. Do any directors have any comments or need to pull anything from the consent calendar?
I have a question. I don't think we need to pull the items. But as I read it over, I just wanted to confirm that in the consent calendar, you're looking to add 3 additional full-time equivalents, 1 for accounting, and then 2 additional for electric. Yeah,
the accounting, and Mike Salmon can answer on the accounting.
I believe not quite exactly that way, Director Harris. My understanding is the accounting position is an add, and that the other two positions are a change in structure.
Okay.
Does that sound right, Brian?
Yes, there's a change in wage scale for the positions. But in terms of FTEs, there's no additional for the substation positions. They're basically a change in structure. So it's a growth opportunity for existing employees, internal employee opportunities.
Okay, but so you're not adding any more FTEs, you're just kind of reworking the ones that we have.
Correct.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, I was curious who was on the committee for the compensation and class study.
For the evaluation of the proposals, that was our HR director, our CFO, and myself.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very good.
I just had one quick question on the, there's a lot of discussion in the electrical positions regarding a new piece of equipment. We're not approving that piece of equipment tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Okay. Any other director comments on the consent? Okay, in which case,
I'll move approval of the
Anybody-
consent calendar.
thank you, Vice President Laliotis.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Director Bender,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis,
Yes,
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to our main event tonight, our workshop item number 14, an update on Nevada Energy's PSOM wildfire safety power outages and the district's response. So this is our chance to learn more and discuss. And Stephen Poncelet, welcome.
Good evening, President Finn and members of the board. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that okay? All
Yeah,
right,
we
this is
can.
workshop item 14, NV Energy Public Safety Outage Management, Wildfire Safety Outages. So a little background in history, the district is a public power provider dependent upon the transmission of electricity from NV Energy. And to remind our audience, there's two big statements in there. We're a public-owned utility, a not-for-profit, community-owned utility governed by our locally elected board. And we are transmission dependent. So we don't generate power locally. We require transmission from NV Energy to serve Truckee. And the district has been responding to catastrophic wildfires in California for many years now. We've expanded vegetation management from 350,000 to almost 1 million since 2019. We've developed wildfire mitigation plans. We've updated them. They've been reviewed by independent third parties, and we're implementing and executing on those plans. We do defensible space on our own parcels because fuel reduction is, not what vegetation management's about. That's line clearing and keeping our equipment safe. But we own properties, and the district has aggressively reduced fuels on those properties. And then the overall hardening of the district's electric and water system, communications, our ability to function in emergencies, and then, of course, the critical water system in those assets. So NV Energy has identified a new wildfire safety de-energization program. It's called Public Safety Outage Management. So you'll hear me say PSOM a lot. They did notify the district and the town in late May. This does include all of Truckee and surrounding areas. So when NV Energy de-energizes our power for wildfire safety, our entire system will go down. It is similar to PG&E's public safety power shutoffs, PSPS, for those who have experienced those over the last few years on the western portion of the county and throughout California with the investor-owned utilities. And the expectation is outages will last from 1 to many days. And it's really important to say that even an hour weather event is forecast to trigger a 24-hour-ish outage. And the reason is that we're in an extreme wildfire danger situation, high winds, high fire danger. The power goes out, we're shut down. If during that time a branch falls onto our system, we can't safely re-energize without potentially causing a wildfire in a very dangerous situation. So NV Energy and us and Liberty Utilities must visually inspect 100% of our system before being able to safely re-energize. And that's estimated to take up to a day. And if the weather event's 2 days, then you got to add another day to that for the restoration. So this is significant. It's new for our community, and we're really working on getting people prepared. The expectation is later in the wildfire season, September, October in a typical year, but I'm not sure what typical is anymore. And NV Energy has said if the conditions present themselves, they would initiate a PSOM immediately. So we are working very quickly to respond. And if you use PG&E as an example, on the summit last year, 10 miles away from here, their PSPS program resulted in 2 outages, and they were about 3 days each. So we don't know exactly the details. It's a new program, but we are preparing for extended power outages much longer than this community has experienced in the last decade. So that's kind of the main message. So I do want to remind everybody our main role during wildfire season in the mission of the Truckee Donner Public Utility District. The first one is protect the safety of our community by minimizing the chances of a district-caused catastrophic wildfire. Simply put, don't burn the community down. And while we don't appreciate, the impacts of NV Energy's PSOM program, we understand the safety rationale behind it. The thing we control the most in this situation is restoring power as quickly and as safely as possible after PSOM. So when the weather event has ended and the dangerous weather condition has ended, NV Energy is committed to give us that all clear notice. And at that point, both NV Energy and Truckee Donner PUD can begin that visual patrol process. And if it happens during the day and NV Energy's flying helicopters, they might get to it in a few hours on a high priority transmission line like ours. But if it happens at 7 o'clock at night, they're not starting until dawn. So there's certain factors that we can't control. And then if we patrol and we find a fault or a failure or a dangerous situation, we have to add in the time to mitigate that. But it's dangerous to be without power. We know what it does to our community for communications. And so we really want to ensure that we're as quick as possible, but it has to be done safely. Communicate. So raising awareness, with our customers, with our community partners, with public safety partners. And we are putting together a protocol for notifications at 48 to 24 hours before a potential PSOM and at 12 to 4 hours before a potential PSOM. And then supporting working with the local Truckee public safety partners and our community. And I'll go a little more into that. So NV Energy, Town of Truckee, Nevada County, and others are banding together to address these issues, including Liberty Utilities, which, I won't speak for their specific details, but they're transmission dependent upon NV Energy as well. So do, face a similar situation to us. So communication channels and protocols so that there's a guarantee that the critical infrastructure and emergency response people know, and then that every customer who's signed up for notifications and wants to know will be given that notification in the form of an email or a push alert or a text if they opt in for that. And then, of course, we'll be working with our local agencies to do robust communications through websites, social media, radio interviews, anything we can to get the word out. And then the town and our partners with things like Nixle, 211, and other avenues to get the word out. We have had 3 meetings of the local Truckee public safety providers, partners, and that's over 25 local agencies and organizations, including the schools, the hospital, critical infrastructure, telecommunication providers, CHP, the main players around town in an emergency, business organizations, HOAs. And the immediate needs include awareness, education, at-risk populations, and communications. And there is a collaborative effort to try to figure out what facilities exist today that could serve as community resource centers to, provide some charging infrastructure, a place to go get information in our community. So what else is the district doing? I've talked earlier about our ongoing wildfire mitigation efforts and vegetation management, and while I am sensitive to some of the concerns raised by community members about vegetation management and utility and road easement clearing projects, they're critical for public safety and super important. And so we're doing our part to keep the community safe. We have done extensive customer and community outreach. We had the business town hall that General Manager Wright talked about earlier yesterday. We have this workshop tonight. This morning, I was on a Zoom with over 20 members of the Community Collaborative, which represent the kind of social network and safety net and nonprofits in our community. And then that traditional and social media, press release, all customer email, bill stuffer. A general manager was on KTKE for 10 minutes talking. We have radio spots going, Sun, Moon, Shire, TD, and the whole gamut. So we're really doing what we can. But most important, we're putting links to our partners on our website, and they're putting links to us on theirs, and they're helping us push the information out. So we're really trying to do that. We're doing English, Spanish versions, and again, a kind of full court press on communication. The district will prohibit non-essential outdoor use during a PSOM, and so that gets into the district's water shortage contingency plan, which was presented to the district and adopted recently in a meeting. But, when the power's down, we need water for the critical uses, so we're going to try to make sure it's available for those critical uses. And then collaborating with local partners to try to start to identify and mitigate local impacts from PSOM, and they're significant. The gas stations don't have backup, so you need to fuel up before. People in our community are used to winter outages, and you take your refrigerator and your freezer and you put it in your garage or on your deck. In September or October, that's probably not a good option. Impacts to critical, to hospitals, to schools, to businesses are significant. And so we are doing what we can in a kind of shoulder to shoulder community effort to address those. So what can district customers and community do? Sign up with us for alerts. Go into your My Account and please update your information. Make sure it's current. If you prefer a text or a push alert over an email, you can opt in for that. If you're a medical baseline customer and you use durable medical equipment, which is a fancy way of saying you need electricity for your medical needs, then please come to us and make sure we have special lists, and we want to make sure you're notified and prepared. And then non-customers can sign up for notifications as well, because we've had that question from a tenant in a threeplex whose landlord pays it and they're not a customer, but they live here and they need to know. To our visitors, and how do we communicate to them for the rentals and everything else, the second homeowners. So we're again trying to figure out who those people in need are and how can we communicate to them. And then this is the personal responsibility part of my presentation. Everyone needs to be prepared, individual, business, agency, and be informed and take action now. This is going to happen. Backup generators, if you need them, they can be a way to mitigate the impacts, but there's serious safety considerations. And we have a new webpage that deals with that. And I'm sorry that's on there. And that's the wrong link to that. It's actually tdpud.org/departments and then /generator-safety. So we'll correct that, but it's easy to find on the website. And, we're trying to get those key pieces of information. And then when we're not the experts, like defensible space or fuels reduction, we link to the fire and have worked with them on where they want us to go. And if they want information on emergency response and evacuation, we send them to the town and the county. If they have health questions, we send them to the hospital. So that's kind of the overall effort that we've been doing there. There's the right link. So the previous link was for general PSOM information, and that's the link up there specifically to generators. So we have 2 new web pages, and we're really working to figure out what people need, what they want to know, and how can we help them. Backup generators, it's one option for those who can't be without power. They must be installed and operated safely. That's to protect the generator user and others. Our linemen can be subject to electrocution from backfeeding of generators. So it's a very serious safety issue for our crew. And then portable generators need to be operated quickly, and they have to be outdoors to protect from carbon monoxide, and they have to be isolated from vegetation to not start fires. And so there's just practical considerations people need. We have been installing industrial level backup generations at key facilities so that we can operate during emergencies and so that, ensure continuity of operations. And then water supply for our wells, our key pumps and tanks for domestic and fire supply. So I'm going to pause there because we're going to go into more bigger responses and then more that microgrid discussion. But if there are specific questions on the PSOM part, I figured I'd pause here and open it up. Director Harris?
I do have a question. So I recognize that this is a lot of work, and you guys are doing a great job with trying to collect everybody's information and everything for the PSOM. Does this also carry forward for regular outages that may happen? Like the squirrels in the lines, or for ones that are unplanned ones.
Sure. So we spend a lot of time and effort to try to get customers to create, to engage with Smart Hub and My Account, because it's really a tool that allows them to control their energy usage and water usage and manage their account. And it's the same tool that we use for notifications and alerts. And so there's benefits to the district if everybody tells us who they are, gives us their information, and tells us what they want. And then we can use that to help with future communications. This protocol is for a planned outage not initiated by the TDPUD, where you're going to have notification. We're going to know days in advance so that we can do this organized rollout of communication so everybody can be prepared when the power goes off. For an unplanned outage, the vast majority resolve themselves before you have time to communicate anyway. In a restoration period, we're kind of all hands to get the power back. And while communication is super important, it's difficult for us in those immediate windows to communicate restoration versus power is going to be off in 48 to 24 hours. Please be prepared. Power is going to be off in 12 to 4 hours. Please be prepared. Here's what you should expect. And then the power goes off, and, the next time they know it's back on is when it comes on. So they are different situations.
So, but you will not be using this for unplanned outages also?
There are no plans at this point to have a communication protocol during an outage, other than what we've been doing historically, which is putting up the website banner and, going on the radio, giving the restoration. Typically, if the power's out, the internet goes down, so your ability to communicate is a little harder through the traditional means, and emails are even less effective. So again, it's a different situation. We're always looking how to improve our outage communications through web, through social, and through other channels. What we get out of this protocol is a better list.
Okay, and then the other question I have is, I understand, what are the hours that our local customer service accepts telephone calls where you actually get a live person on Donner Pass Road?
I'm going to defer to Michael Salmon for that one. Mr. Salmon, I believe it's Monday through
Thursday.
Okay.
And what, during what hours?
I believe it's 9 to 4 right now.
Okay, is there any plans to extend that out back to the 8 to 5, Monday through Friday?
There are plans to do that as we get out of COVID and get out of some staffing situations and improve the staffing levels.
It's just, I know people are always, we are a small community-owned utility. It's always appreciative to get a local person who's right down the road, who understands what's going on rather than somebody at a call center that's in a different state. So, or whatever that's worth.
We're trying our best.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I know you guys are working hard. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Director Harris. Do any other directors have any questions at this point for Stephen?
President Finn, I'd like to make just one quick statement. Stephen mentioned the link for folks who aren't customers or do not have accounts with the district and the ability to sign up for e-notifications for, let's say, visitors or Airbnb renters or short-term residents. That hasn't been launched yet on our website. It will shortly. We're constructing it now. We will have that available, though, here in the coming days. Just didn't want it to be misleading if someone sees the presentation this evening and goes to our website. We are still working on that, and it will be up here shortly.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, General Manager. And yes, we are constructing that. So my apologies for getting out ahead of that. If I could continue, then I'm going to kind of move into when we talk about PSOM and the fact that, we've only known for short term, we really start talking about short-term solutions. What can we do with what we have now? And then longer term solutions, because fire season's here now, and almost anything today takes, more than a month or two to execute on, particularly capital or engineering or complicated projects. So the community response to wildfire and safety outages, most people have been paying attention and seen this coming, have watched PG&E and have been concerned about the catastrophic fires. So there's been a lot of hardening of individual homes and businesses, generators, defensible space, being smart about it, including the district. And that's the individual responsibility, again, to do that. And, Truckee Fire Measure T is an example of going after wildfire fuels in defensible space, which is the other part of the individual homes or businesses. And then there's the general forest health. And then we've talked in our strategic planning task force groups and focus groups about, a lot of the initiatives we've talked about, local clean generation, undergrounding of overhead power lines. A big motivation was fire and community resilience. And, it kind of got down to public safety and electric system reliability. And when you look at that, we started having discussions on what is the critical needs of our community, right? And if we couldn't power everyone, who's the first one we would power? Who's the second? Who's the next? Who's the last? Just to understand it, because, the more you mitigate in terms of trying to create redundancy, the more it costs. And that hierarchy of needs discussion really started with the critical thing, and there's no discussion about it, is emergency response and, critical life and safety has to be maintained. The second level gets kind of into that basic public health and safety issues. It's not life-threatening yet, but if it's not addressed, it could be. Then you kind of get into basic needs, fuel, food, communications. And then you get into business and economy, in that there's major disruptions to commerce and to visitors and to agencies, and it costs a lot of money when that happens. And then at the bottom end, it's kind of the individual home and the individual's needs. And so I'll refer to that later in the presentation, because as people advocate for this solution or that solution, you kind of have to ask, where in that hierarchy of needs does this flow? And, what's the community willing to spend to address, each level? Because as you go down, the costs escalate dramatically, the hierarchy of needs. So potential solutions to mitigate the impacts of extended outages, again, short-term and long-term. And what we'll often find is their co-benefits and co-costs. If you keep the hospital open, it benefits all the users, but it also benefits, Truckee Fire, who's not getting ambulance calls, or another agencies that's not, dealing with the emergency that gets created by that. There's individual, business, utility, and community. Should Truckee Honor Public Utility District, create a microgrid and give everybody in our community redundancy? Or should individual businesses and homes take on that responsibility if that's, part of why they exist or what they're doing? So that's why I kind of go from that individual, business, utility, and community. Ultimately, it's, how much do you want to socialize some of these costs, and where do you think the right place is for them to land? And that's a question to the board, but to the greater community, because it involves all the key stakeholders and agencies. So local generation and microgrids, it's one potential option to mitigate transmission outages. They need to be sized and located to address that hierarchy of needs. So microgrids are geographically constrained, and they power what you pick and nothing else. And so what are you going to choose to power? You need to evaluate the relative costs and benefits of distributed generation at key facilities versus utility-wide generation. So should Safeway put a generator in, or should we power that circuit? They can be temporary or permanent. They can be backup generation or a local power plant. They can't be fossil fuel or clean. So there's really a lot of different ways to get at redundancy and backup and resiliency, which is what we're talking about here. So there's been a pretty vocal Truckee microgrid request advocating for portable fossil fuel generators to be located in key downtown circuits, at substations, to power up, essentially the old downtown and Donner Pass Road all the way up through the district. And that would catch a lot of businesses, a supermarket, it would catch a gas station or two, the hospital and the schools, which would be the critical ones. And they use an example of a project that PG&E has implemented in Grass Valley for that. And so I thought we'd spend a little time talking about what, microgrids are and are not. U.S. Department of Energy defines a microgrid as a group of interconnected load and distributed energy resources in a clearly defined electrical boundaries that act as a single, and I can't see that part of my screen, so I apologize for not reading it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's up on the screen. But a microgrid can connect and disconnect from the grid. It can operate as part of the grid, or it can operate in an island mode or by itself. So when a person hooks up a generator to their house with cords, a portable generator, that's kind of a microgrid at the generator and cord level. When they wire it into their panel with a transfer switch that automatically senses losses of power and automatically turns on the home generator or business generator, that's a microgrid with the controls and sophistication you need. If you have solar on your home without a battery, that's not a microgrid. It won't work without power. And it can't power the home by itself without, the services of the utility and everything else, except for in those tiny windows where they're generated and the load matches the generation. But without power and no batteries, solar system, rooftop residential solar systems don't work. And so they vary in size and can power a home, a business, a campus, or an isolated area. So emergency generators or other generations by themselves are not microgrid. Again, it's what I was talking about. Microgrids have a central control system and an automated design switching system to be able to function within a utility grid environment. They enable operation in parallel to the utility grid or island mode. Power is typically generated by diesel and natural gas, and they can be powered by renewable sources if coupled with storage. Diesel or natural gas are typically necessary for sustained 24/7 operations in terms of a feasible and cost-effective point of view. And you must consider the associated cost, performance, and environmental impacts of these microgrids. One of the things that I spend time on, every other week in the PSOM and wildfire issues is that everybody's using fossil fuel powered generators. And there's laws in California that restrict the use of fossil fuel powered generators. So the air quality management districts are, threatening to fine utilities, businesses, government agencies for overusing their generators. So, you have the environmental impacts, you have the economic impacts, and then you have the impacts to the community that we're trying to mitigate through those. So implementing a Truckee microgrid, should you choose to go that way, I did reach out to a contact we have at PG&E who is kind of leading the mitigation efforts on the West Slope and was given to us through the town and the county. It takes them 1 to 2 years to implement a microgrid in terms of design, procurement. The one in Grass Valley, they're bringing in a couple flatbed 18-wheel trucks with diesel generators on them, but they had to do the design and the engineering and the permitting and figure out a place to park the trucks and get the right equipment to hook them up. And that takes 1 to 2 years. So today they're starting on a new one in Penn Valley, they said, and they're expecting it to be in 2 years. So it's not quick. The district has a industrial generator on order for one of our water projects, and I believe our lead time's pushing half a year. So these are complex and long lead time projects. And the substation microgrids do, one thing that's nice about them is they power a whole circuit, whether it's critical or not. The downside is you're powering a critical circuit, whether it's needed or not. And then if you did the Truckee microgrid area, it would not address any other area of the community. And so, I don't know how they would feel about, not having power in their communities while others did. So I think it's just, those are some of the things to consider. We did start doing some, very high level engineering work because people are interested in understanding this opportunity, and so am I, but it's one of 5 opportunities I'm interested in understanding. And then I want to measure them against each other to figure out what's the best for the community. But for this one, we did look into some of the the national organizations that do research and work on this. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory had a microgrid study in 2018, so fairly recent, although I think one would argue the costs have probably escalated somewhat significantly since then. But they analyzed cost information for 80 microgrids nationwide, and they ranged from 2 million per megawatt of capacity to 4 million of megawatt per installed capacity. And the generation, whether that's a power plant, a diesel generator, a windmill, a solar batteries, is the major cost of the project. So we looked at Truckee substation loads, which is our main substation down in that area. It's about 8 megawatts total load, and 3 megawatts for the most critical circuit, which is the one that would have the hospital, half of the old downtown, and then the kind of Donner Pass Road corridor up here through the hospital. And so if you do the math there, based on their data, it's a $16 to $32 million project to have a microgrid that would power a Truckee substation. And I'll remind the board, we have 4 substations, so that's just one of 4. And about 6 to 12 million for one critical circuit. So while there's benefits to that, that's a significant cost and effort. And, could we do better with that money? Would be a question I would ask. So there is no fiscal impact associated with this workshop. District is spending about 1.5 million more on vegetation management since 2019. That's against a $25 million utility. So that's, a significant percentage of our revenue. The cost of compliance with SB 901 and to implement the wildfire mitigation plan is significant, and we're learning, but they're not fully understood yet. And then the cost to respond and mitigate the impacts of public safety outage management, wildfire safety, de-energizations by NV Energy is also significant and even less known. So this is a significant financial impact to the district and our ratepayers. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Whew. Ay, ay, ay.
Hey, that's a very good report, Steve. Very good. A lot of information in that.
Yeah, the more we learn, the more we realize we have to learn, huh? On this particular subject.
The more scared I get,
Mhm.
the more I hear. That's all right.
Well, I'm opening it up to the board. Do we have any questions for Stephen or each other, for that matter?
Do you want to take public comment first?
Well, yeah, I do. You know what? We don't usually do that on workshops. That would be a Steve Gross. I'm happy to, let's just say, do we have any public comment? And we did already read and receive Mr. Dewey's. Is there anything else, other comments on this agenda item?
No, Madam President, I do not see any right now.
Thank you, Shauna. Okay, and which brings it back to us. Do we have any? We're stunned. I think we've.
Steve, right now we're working on the backup generators. Is that what I understand at this point? To have the microgrid with the help it along?
The district's working on backup generation for our key electric and water facilities,
Okay.
but not for the general public or, anyone else.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because I know we're getting generators for backup, so that's for the pumps in our water facilities.
Yeah, Director Aguirre, one of the things that's changed in our approach in the past, we've purchased and installed automatic transfer switches and generators at pump stations in preparation for winter storm outages. What's changed now is the the summer weather condition PSOMs present a new challenge because that's our high water demand season, where the winter is a very low water demand. So we're faced with a new challenge. As Stephen pointed out, we were awarded a $300,000 grant to purchase a new generator for Martis Valley Well. And so our new focus is on well backup generators. So we have continued supply in the summer season.
Now, we finally did get that grant, didn't we? Didn't we use that grant? Good. Okay,
Yes.
I think that's what I saw on there. Thank you.
Yeah, and there was a significant lead time to
Yeah,
get. I know that's another concern. Just supply chains have been snarled this past year, and they're not unsnarled yet. So it's a wait just for equipment, which is frustrating.
Yeah, I know. Good presentation, Stephen. I being in the utility business for a long time, I'm, sensitive to the issue of power outages. I mean, we do live in mountain climate and we do get multiple day power outages in the wintertime. So as a utility manager, one of our primary focuses has been making sure that we are able to provide services to our customers, which sewer collection and water, drinking water are essential, essential life, services for our community. And we have certainly pushed and increased our coverage of backup generators. At this point, we're installing our last generator at a sewer pump station where we'll have every single sewage pumping station on backup power, available backup power by the end of this summer. So, I think it's always been incumbent upon all of our essential services and community, and all the way down to the businesses to look at backup power, because multiple day power outages are nothing new for our community. I know obviously that there's significant infrastructure at the hospital. I know that, the gas station at 80 and in Donner Pass Road has a backup generator. I mean, there is infrastructure in this community that exists today to protect individual businesses, emergency services, critical services against power outages. I'm curious to, explore more about how widespread that coverage is amongst our businesses and community essential services, and to understand better that, because I think one approach is to support the community in building their own resilience, the businesses and critical services, and building their own resilience versus a sort of a knee-jerk reaction to PSOMs and microgrids. But we do have long-term goals that are looking at our own sustainability and our own resiliency within this community for power, which will play into that as well. So I think, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces, and this has to be a multi-pronged approach to solving this issue. This is not an issue that will be solved during this summer season. And I appreciate Brian's comment that, we're used to wintertime outages, which means our loads are generally going to be higher on the electric and lower on the water side. But in the summertime, it's quite opposite. So building the resiliency into our water system is a critical approach that I'm confident that Brian and his department, his crews will identify and keep moving forward with building our own infrastructure resiliency for water, which is extremely important. So that's kind of my kicking off my initial thoughts on this process. But I do thank Stephen and the rest of the staff for getting ahead of this very, very quickly and staying ahead of it while really collaborating with the community, the stakeholders, and the public in addressing these issues head on, and keeping everyone informed, trying to figure out ways to keep more people informed. It's just really good work on the district's part, and I want to thank the community for not only the district but the community for coming together and really trying to evaluate this thing on a much higher level.
Thank you, Vice President Laliotis. And I want to echo that. One of the things that he said was on my mind as well. As I would like to have a better idea of what resources already exist within this community. Who has generators, even down to the home level? Who has solar panels with battery backup? That and can we marshal some of those resources, or at least understand what they are and where they are, so we can not worry about a certain level of people, and I can see the district playing a role in helping people acquire battery backups, for example, for their solar systems, as a more distributed resources instead of focusing on a large generation at a substation situation. I think this issue is, it is complex. The solutions are going to be complex. It's easy to say, I think we should have a small community solar with a battery backup and a small biomass plant and be done with it. But the millions of dollars, we have to pay for things, and our ratepayers pay for them. So that's going to be a big piece of this puzzle. What trees are we going to shake to make that happen? So that's a different department is going to, we need to, and I'm hopeful that there is going to be money for these sorts of sustainability and resilience efforts coming from the state and the federal level. Of course, Hope doesn't build a biomass plant or anything, but I think we should keep our eyes open for those opportunities, which will, having a plan is what's going to get us that money too. So that's just another thing that I think piece that we need to think about and be in front of as much as we can. And I'm looking forward to attending a couple of seminars on microgrids in the coming up week, just to help me understand more thoroughly the subject. So it's not quick and easy. So we have that. Thank you, Stephen, for your presentation. I think you covered a lot of territory, and there's a lot of information in there that I don't think we were all aware of. Just the nuance and what the future might hold. I mean, it's possible that we someday in the future will have to implement our own. In which case, all of this backup generation, we'll have to shut it down anyway. Is that like if California said that publicly owned utilities also had to have a PSPS plan, just like the investor-owned utilities do? We're back at square one with an outage, and we're not allowed to turn our system on because we had a plan that we had to stick to. That's weird.
You are correct that a solution of an island with a local power plant, like a biomass, or a solution of a microgrid at the substation level would be subject to a board decision or a regulatory mandate to initiate PSPS at the distribution level, because we're talking about a transmission level PSPS, at which point the only redundancies at the home or individual business microgrid level. So you are correct in that. And just to add a little information to both Vice President Laliotis' and your comments, at the local Truckee public safety partner level, the 25 agencies, we have a project to identify the redundancy, the size of the generators, but also who has fuel and how long does it go. If it's batteries, no matter how big it is, you're probably not going to go much more than a day. But if it's a generator, you're only restricted by fuel. And so we're also taking it one level further to fuel sharing for critical infrastructure and for emergency response. I do agree taking that to the next level of, okay, what about businesses? To me would be that next level on the hierarchy of needs, those basic needs. And I'd start asking the basic needs people, hey, who has this? And then I'd go to economy, which is all businesses, and then I'd go to homes. So I think it's something worth pursuing. And some of it we're going to find because we ask and people volunteer. And some of it, unfortunately, we're going to find out because of the impacts of the first outage.
Yeah, and just to toss in there, as I know you all know from me, that I am not supportive of fossil fuel burning generators as a solution to this problem. So, I personally would like to shift the focus immediately to other what those might be. I don't know. So there you go, magic. But I'm sure I have a lot of research to do. so.
I liked the, Tony pointing out that, we have two services. We have electric and we have water. And how do we kind of create the environment to where we are able to continue to support those, two services that we do provide. I like the solar, how in getting an understanding of how many people do have solar and the battery backup, get a better understanding of that and the availability that we can offer for businesses, whether it's grants or some type of financial support to have that help them with putting something like that in. So that will, minimize the use of fossil fuels for solar. But then the other thing is that, the gentleman, he did bring up the fact that I know we did just do the strategic plan, and we did identify it, or the community identified the 4 areas back in October, I think. It needs change. And so I know that we have those 2 committees. Maybe if we could put one of them on hold and explore this with people while it has the momentum, to listen in and hear what other people have to say as part of the research. Krista, it sounds like you'll be attending some classes and to get a better understanding, and just, in the meantime, not, just kind of put it on pause for broadband and maybe look at the microgrid and give it a couple of months to kind of get a better understanding what the community wants, what the priorities are for businesses, what the businesses already have, and where does the community want it to go. So that's kind of my suggestions, but I do appreciate all the information. And I think as a community, we all are so rich with our own experiences that it's helpful to listen to everybody. So I do appreciate Stephen, as well as the rest of the board and general manager, with the information you have. Thank you.
I definitely agree that this is another large community conversation that has now started, which is great. In one way, that's the silver lining here, is at least we're talking about this now. And it, as far as sustainability and resilience goes, this has always been, that's always been the pinch point, is that we've got that one, we're transmission dependent on Nevada energy. So I'm glad that we are having the discussion. I do think it's really important to really understand better the community's needs in this moment and expectations, and help educate them on what can realistically be done, I guess. And I don't want to, but yeah, just the reality of the situation and how much it costs. And I did do a quick little, Google, PG&E, and a large difference between us and them. Their net worth is $19.5 billion. So they do have resources that they can deploy much more quickly than we can, and also they have the ability to, example, raise rates on their customers, which we don't have. I mean, we can, but it's a real process, and I would be extremely careful of that. We are publicly owned. Our ratepayers are our friends and neighbors here in Truckee. That's who's going to pay for everything. So it's unless, again, there's money coming from somewhere. So anyway, a lot of things for us to think about. I appreciate everybody thinking about them. Brian, I saw your finger go up.
Yeah, I would like to, I think, the start of a great discussion. Director Harris brought up the initiatives, and I think there's an opportunity for the board here in the coming weeks, maybe coming months. We do have an initiative that's kind of related to this item, and then that's local generation. And, exploring or pursuing what local generation here. And during our focus groups and the original task force meetings, the topic with 100% renewable and local generation really revolved around local resiliency and public safety. And, in addition to the greenhouse gas reductions and all of the environmental stewardship. So maybe there's an opportunity for this board to perhaps examine combining the two initiatives and, getting some more traction on those in terms of, combined efforts. I think that the community broadband has so much momentum right now in the community that we would, we might cause some, really some large interruption in the process here if we were to table that initiative at this point. But that's for the board here to to discuss and review. But I think perhaps there's an opportunity to include that local generation in this discussion.
I'd be happy to smush those together. Operation Smush of renewable and local generation. I'd be on both of those anyway, and I'm certainly happy to entertain. I'd run it by the potential participants of those groups. But I think the topics are strongly linked, and have overlap of interest from the community members that would participate on either one of those focus or not focus groups, but community initiative groups. So.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm sensitive in some respects to broadband because it's a very it was very high up in the community's needs assessment, and for us as a board, we have to consider financial responsibility, as Chris alluded to, rates. And, broadband touches virtually everyone in this community. Resiliency of a very specific small area of our community for PSOM does not. So we always have to be cognizant of, the efficiencies of how we do our business, and what we pursue and what we don't pursue. So I think, Brian, your suggestion is a good suggestion, that we should be flexible enough to pivot here and there. And I think there's some overlap in between resiliency and renewable and the committee we just already established. So I would support, sort of maybe starting to, create a separate, a parallel path within that existing committee. That committee's charge to, include looking more at how we make our community more resilient, and how we can make it more resilient at a higher level, not just very focused on small areas.
Yeah, and I think the advocacy and membership in those early GM task force and the workshops early on in the strategic planning process, the advocacy in both those initiatives they parallel very nicely. And I think the expertise as well in terms of our overall generation portfolio, what's local generation look like, and what's local resiliency. So perhaps staff could come back to the board with an item to propose how that kind of streamlining of those two initiatives works, and carry some of the momentum we already have.
I favor that path. Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with everything that's said, the overlapping there with the committees, following the priorities, getting the critical infrastructure in place first. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. So, and that's super important in the utility industry. Agree that it's a long-term thing. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. That's when you get the unintended consequences. I think about the book, Truckee, Fire and Ice. I don't want to write another chapter. 2021, Truckee burns down because we put a diesel fuel generator, and because of a PSOM, because that's a safety outage for wildfire. We can't just be re-energizing lines without studying it fully, hence the long-term project. What wires are above ground? We're not fully underground yet. So we probably have power lines that are still endangered, hence the whole point of the PSOM, shutting down power for the safety of the community. So it's not something that we all agree on. It's not something to take lightly. We need to study this, make sure it happens safely. I like how everyone included, bringing that committee together and including PSOM. And again, Stephen, thank you for all the information. Really good to just have the info, the data, the numbers, the costs implemented. And we need to stay on task. The strategic plan was a big lift. We got information from the community. We know what the priorities are. And this is something we can pivot, Tony, to slide in and add to one of those committees and not dump something that's also extremely important to the community. And lastly, generators have been around for a long time. Contractors use them all the time on job sites. There's manual transfer switches. There's automatic transfer switches. The payback for the PUD is really not looking there. There's no ROI on that for, to dump 10 million on somebody saving a couple $100,000. But for that one entity, that one business, it might be worth dropping 50 grand to save $500,000. That's a pretty good payback right there. So that technology is out, and there's a website that, Stephen, thank you for pointing that out, on how to do portable generators and permanent. It's in the construction standards of the PUD, and they've been there for a long time. And there's a method to solve that. So really appreciate the information, and thank you.
Just one other thing, if the power's down, even if you have a generator, your internet's not going to work. And a lot of the downtown businesses are dependent on their internet being up to make sales. So again, you could do a hotspot, right? A cellular hotspot, which the tower might have a generator, or you have just satellite service, something like that. Yeah. Discussion with a number of the downtown, and their systems are too complex. They can't, like for me, it's easy. I can easily take cash. I can easily take credit card numbers and charge them later. But I have a super simple system. I don't even have a POS. It's just me and my wine. But some of the more complex, word after word. Like, I've got 20,000 SKUs. She's like, when my internet goes down, I have to close. Because people don't have the patience or the to buy from her in that situation. So her internet problem has been a real problem, a real recurring problem. And these power outages, again, it's the world that we have built is really dependent on the internet and power, and they don't work independently of each other. And another thing that we've talked about is during an outage, we want people to refrain from, using their phones and using that, because we need those lines open for emergency use, and the towers get overwhelmed. So, again, this is a whole really sticky ball of wax when you keep taking it apart, So I don't even know, I'm not convinced of just getting the power back on, with microgrids. Is that going to be super helpful to our businesses? Certainly as far as conserving food and things like that, yes, right. That makes, but actually doing business is hard to do without your internet nowadays. All right, sorry. I'm going to quit just thoughts, it's just this. These are the things that I'm sure keep a lot of us up at night. Okay, Stephen, thank you. Does anybody have any closing, anything else they would like to add? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much, Stephen, for your presentation this evening. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So we do have a quick, sorry, let me get to where I want to be. We have a finance corporation meeting. So at this moment, I'm going to, before we go into closed session, I'm going to put our open meeting into abeyance, and we're going to open the finance corp meeting. So that it is now, what, 7:20? And I think that's all I have to do. Open it. Do we have to get a roll call
You can defer that if you would like, Madam President.
for the roll? Because we know we're all here. We'll defer the pledge. Do we have any changes to this agenda, our finance corporation agenda? I think Brian froze. Oh, no. I shifted gears and I opened up the finance corporation meeting.
Yeah, that's all right.
Brian, do we have any changes to this agenda?
Sorry, President Finn, I couldn't get my mic to unmute. We have no changes.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on?
No,
That's
Madam
not on. Thank you. And so that brings us to our only item on it is item 6, to accept the approval of the 2020 annual disclosure report and the 2020 audited financial statements for the 2015 certificate of participation, continuing disclosure requirements. This item concurs the acceptance of the audited financial reports for the Finance Corporation, which we received a couple of weeks ago. I believe we had the auditors come in and speak with us. So, Mr. Salmon, is there anything that you would like to add?
I do have a brief presentation. If you'd like me to run through that, I can. Share my screen. Pretty straightforward matter. We, as the regular business of the district, we have approved the financial statements. There is the addition of the pipeline disclosures annual report. So, at the pleasure of the board.
Well, this is what we just received maybe a month ago with the financial audit. Oops. Okay, let's do it.
Yes. So this is a meeting of the Truckee Donner Public Utility District Financing Corporation. It's a legal entity to assist us with the issuance of certificates of participation. The Financing Corporation Board reviews and approves the annual report and audited financial statements, which have been included in your board packets. The annual disclosures require certain specific information to be disclosed regarding the water utility. Basically, the bonds require certain disclosures on an annual basis, so we fulfilled that requirement, and the board needs to accept this report to complete that action. Also, filing with the certificates of participation are the primary government financial statements as well as the consolidated financial statements, which are now part of a comprehensive annual financial report. So those have been completed. We had 1.5 billion gallons of water in 2020 and 13,253 customers, 13.5 million in revenue. Our 10 largest customers were 24% of our total usage. Those included golf courses, mobile home park, Tahoe Donner Association, and a few of the districts in town. Our debt coverage ratio continues to improve. I believe it was 2.41 last year. There's 5 years presented in the packet of information. There is no direct financial impact associated with this item. We're asking the board of the Finance Corporation to accept the 2020 annual disclosure report and 2020 audited financial statements for the 2015 certificate of participation's continuing disclosure requirements.
Very good. Thank you, Mr.
With that, I'll turn it back over to President Finn.
Do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam President.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the board?
Krista, I just want to point out one thing, that one of the things I enjoy of this, with this report every year, is the water production, historic water production and accounts chart. I think it's kind of buried in this report, but I want to point out that in 2004, the district produced 2.4 million or billion gallons of water. And in 2020, despite having almost 2,000 more connections, we produced 1.4 billion gallons of water. You know, that we need to reflect upon the success of our investments in pipeline replacements, metering, and conservation, and all the efforts that staff has put in, and with the support of this board to get to that point. I mean, that's a pretty astonishing statistic, and I just wanted to point that out, remind the board, and kudos to staff and the community for stepping up and preserving our resource that we have here in Martis Valley. So thank you, and take a look at page 6 of 170 of that report. It's pretty good stuff.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. I absolutely agree. Director Harris, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 170-page document, and I just want to thank staff. It's a lot of information in there. I actually requested a printed copy, so thank you, Brian, for making that available for me, just so I can go through and make notes and get a better understanding of all this stuff, because there's a lot of information in there, but we do appreciate it, and thank you very much, Mike, to you and your staff for everything you've done for this.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, if that's it, then I am happy to entertain a motion. I think we have to.
Thank you, Michael. I think this is a big deal here, even if it comes up once or twice a year, but there's a lot of work to it. Thanks again. Madam President, I'll move the ratification of this report.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Director Bender,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis,
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And I am now going to officially adjourn this meeting of the Finance Corporation meeting and return to the regular meeting. Okay, we're back in the regular meeting. And now we are going to shift over to the first of our closed sessions. Is everybody prepared to do that? And this is everybody will be there. Okay, so we'll see you in a few minutes on the, yes, Steve.
I think we should announce that we will be going into closed session under both items 15 and 16 at this point, because we won't come back into open session between the two of them. So we can just announce that we're going into the closed sessions under items 15 and 16 as listed on the agenda. And Director Harris might want to state for the record that she's got a conflict with respect to item 16.
I have a conflict as it relates to item 16.
Okay, but we're all going to start with item 15. So we're going to go into closed session, discuss both of these items, starting with 15, and we'll see you all there now.
2-minute break?
Yes, please. Let's take a few minutes. Let's take a 10-minute break. You're welcome. So we will be back. It's 7:29 at 7:39. Bye.